Hello, everyone. I am here today to introduce you to the amazing author of The Future of Truth and How to Get There, the wonderful Lindley Gooden. I will not wait a moment in bringing him up, and he is joining us live from the UK at the wonderful hour of 6 a.m. Come and join me, Lindley.
Yeah,
Thank you for coming.
6:30 a.m. I mean, it's
Get
it's like the golden hour, you know?
This is where we get the best out of you. There's no filter.
Yeah, apparently that's what you told me last night when you said, "Get up at 6:30, Linley. Get up at 6:30."
Be on camera at 6:30. Thank you.
That's right.
Oh, we are here to talk about your epic book. I love the conversation around this. I love the conversations you have with us in it. But before we get into the book, can you give us a little bit of a background about you and kind of then we can get to know the why behind this book?
Yeah, absolutely. I often refer to myself as a reformed journalist. I was a journalist for a long time on the national broadcasting channels in the UK. I'm in London right now, and covered a lot of stories, a lot of serious, a lot of lights. One thing that I was really fanatical about was making sure that the information that I put out, that I put my name to, was accurate. Look, you make mistakes, of course you do, but what I'm worried about, and I think we're all worried about right now, is the quality of our information diet. We know that things are really slipping so far, and especially for young people, that we have to do something about it. But what do we do? Now, my background was a physicist before that, and a journalist. And since the last 20 years, I've been creating content for businesses, and I'm still as fanatical as I was back then. Which means, of course, that you don't always work with companies that you don't like the look of. But yes, so I that has informed me into this complete accident of writing a book. It was fully unintentional, but it
And
just
then I
broke
come
itself
along.
down. Yeah,
So
listen,
this
I
has
mean,
to be a book.
it was just great to meet you, and it was great to know that potentially there might be a way to make this thing real, because there's such a demand. I mean, the World Economic Forum, who many believed during COVID was, and still do sometimes in conspiracy world, believe that is at the heart of a conspiracy to stop us from earning and living the way we want to. They now rate mis and disinformation as the number one societal risk in the world. And in the book, actually, which I was slightly too late for, last year, they rated it as top 5 in the next 5 years. This is accelerating at a rate that we need to really, really focus on it. It's so serious. I mean, I've tried to lighten it up in places, but it's so serious. And I'm just really happy to have, at this time in everyone's lives, in my life, to have really caught on to it and written something about it, because there are things that we can do. There are instinctive things that we can do to prepare ourselves for the information that we're being given, the false information we're being given, and to fight back against it. In some ways, it's quite simple, but we do have to do a bit of work on ourselves and to work out the mechanisms behind it. And then, whether we're looking at the news, whether we're looking at social media, and of course that's a big cause of the problem, there are simple steps that we can take to navigate around the problems that are definitely there for all of us, but particularly our younger people.
It's the next generation, that we have to really focus on. And it starts with us and our habits and what we expose ourselves to, what we react to, and what we action. Because quite often we fuel it with fear or fuel it with, all of this type of, it's coming, and we're just feeling it. We're the tabloids, all of the things, and I know you're a former journalist, but it's like, you've got insight. You can see how people react to sensationalism and things like that. And so let's talk about the future of truth. What is the solution, Lindsay?
Well, first of all, it's an ostentatious title. Who on earth can possibly know the future of truth? Look, I mean, it's a journey, right? So first of all, if we understand the mechanisms that we as humans have always had, we've evolved these things, and fear is the right word. You mentioned the word fear. Fear is one of the most blinding triggers to false information. Understandably, because that's what happened around campfires, that's what happened around our smartphones for all of these millennia. Fear is the thing that activates us. And when we get activated, we go, what?
Yes.
What I call, and other authors have called, our chimp brain kicks in. And what chimps do actually in the real world is they clear, I mean, they're aggressive, right? They clear the forest around them, make their own zones safe. They're incredibly murderous and aggressive. And essentially, that's what our brains still do. There's something in there which activates, and there's lots of neuroscience around it, which you'll find in the book. What we can do is to just stop for a second. Now, this sounds so simple. It's that count to 10 thing. No, actually count to 0.1 seconds, and already you're disrupting the process that immediately makes us react to fear. You know, actually, Karen, this first came to me when during COVID, when we were all so worried and so fearful, and people were dying, and people were getting very, very sick around the world. And I heard vox pops in America where people were saying, well, I won't mention it now, I've mentioned it in the book, but they were so angry about mask wearing, right? And you know, it is right that we should always ask questions, but they were so angry. And it was about wearing masks. And I couldn't understand quite why a bit of cloth would bother people quite so much. And it's because it rattled core beliefs and it made them angry. If you can bring in that little bit of logic again, and the whole mechanism takes a bit of time to understand, but once you bring in a little bit of logic, it's the enemy of fear, it's the enemy of emotion, and you can start to navigate your way back to the truth. If we do that, then we can actually build the future of truth. The title itself is actually about having a happier, healthier future of truth. And we need that. I think we all need to know how we can start to trust the information that we see again, and to understand when it's not true, where to go for the real stuff. And that's journalistic. It's not just neuroscience, it's journalistic. And I was actually talking to, we had a little informal launch party this weekend, and everyone was grabbing the friends and family and so on. And we actually had the great daughter of a friend of mine, a cameraman from news who I worked with 20 years ago. And she was scrolling. Yeah, she was scrolling. And I said, how many social channels do you actively use? And she said, 10. And she went through the list of all the channels, and they all had their own individual purpose. They all had their own individual friends. So I said, well, how do you check your information? And she said, okay, so for certain stories, I go to this place. For certain stories, I go to that place. And what I loved about that was she was already half the way to a healthier, happier future of truth, because her dad, my friend, had been training her relentlessly on what not to trust. And it's brilliant. So if you suspend a little disbelief, you suspend a little of your trust in the story and don't fall fully for it, that is just one simple little step you can take to build a happier, healthier future of truth. It's very simple, but you have to go through that process, and it's all there, hopefully, in the book.
It is there in the book. It's like instinctively we react, but when we take that split second to pause and shift the dial, and education is so key, isn't it? And keeping ourselves informed and questioning, because we are all instinctive beings. And when something is flagged with us within, we can't just take something at face value because someone that is in power, I use that loosely, or influence. Says it, you know what I mean? Someone of influence says it. You don't just take it at face value. You can question it, and by questioning it, you're opening up a conversation that others can join. And it takes courage, doesn't it, Lindley? Though
it does, and you've hit three little points there, which I'll mention. First of all, education. There's a country, and I'll blow this one because it's really worth hearing in our interview right now, but also through the book, is Finland. Finland teach their young people in schools as part of the national curriculum. They teach them how to spot mis and disinformation, how to spot false accounts. It's part of life, and it was inspired potentially by the closeness to Russia over those Cold War years, but also it was before Brexit in the UK. It was before the January 6th uprising in the US. This was independent. It's a fantastic thing. And there is a really, really interesting set of articles which can help you, which I put in the book, a bit of research, which again guide us towards what we can do, and why sharing information is so damaging. I mean, we would normally blame the algorithms, wouldn't we? Blame the bots for force feeding us this bad information, and that is partly true, of course. But they need food, they need inspiration, and the inspiration actually, sadly, is the way we share. So we are much more likely to share false information and fake news. And why is that? Because it makes us feel, because of the emotions, because of the fear. It absolutely, we are alive naturally and evolutionarily. We're alive to fear and to the threat. And if you look at you mentioned the politicians as well, the third thing. Yeah, I can't really call them leaders in so many cases, but they feed us the threats. Populism, actually, and I've defined it in the book, populism isn't quite what we think. If you listen to any news output, you'll hear the word populism thrown around like, like some kind of snack. Populism actually is about a politician who claims that they do everything they do is for us. Now, I think we can agree that they don't.
Well, I'm sure people can come to their conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? But what they do is they feed us these threats, which makes us feel fear, which makes us go extreme, which makes the other side go the other way and say that's ridiculous. What happens? Divide and rule. And there's a whole, I've actually devoted quite a lot of the book in the middle sections to populism and how, even if it's not politics, there are really good ways to manipulate us. And if we're just aware of those things in our information, in the language used, we can see the truth again. This is stuff that in some ways it should be instinctive already, but we've forgotten how to do it. We're so blasted by information. We're so surrounded by this stuff, and we can't see the wood for the trees. So it's only inevitable that we would trust the stuff that we see that isn't true, and that certainly goes into conspiracies. And there's a lot on conspiracy. If you're a conspiracy belief addict, you'll have food in there too. There's a lot of that, and also I've put together a bit of maths. The conspiracy equation will hopefully weigh a conspiracy and look at the harm of it as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing as well, is that this is a fast-paced world. Things are moving at a fast pace, and and we are gifting our trust to people, and sometimes that's being abused, and it's not okay. All right, I want to delve, because we're
racing away.
Everything's just going so fast in this interview, because I am fascinated by this subject. I just want to delve into the book and just touch on a few chapter titles, so you can give us a little bit of an insight into behind it. So let's go. Chapter 1. And I just want to share with everyone, within this book, like, the chapter has so many little subsections, and I love how it's delivered to us in concisely, so that we can just absorb it, and it's just amazing. So well done. Right, so chapter 1, we all love to tell tall tales. Can you talk a bit more on that?
Yeah, so we all love to tell tall tales. It's the story of stories. Why is storytelling so gripping? How does it work on us? I mean, what are the feelings we get from the stories? And actually, the most important thing about stories is that they're packed with information that you don't have to use the words. We interpret stories in a way, and that's helped us and our ancestors to get out of danger. We've got weak, fleshy bodies. We might think a lot, but we're not that strong. So stories would help us to protect ourselves from threats. That's why threats become so important to us. So I wanted to play with titles of the books. I need to be entertained too. I've got a short attention span. I really need to have some fun around through the book as well. So I've used things like We All Love to Tell Tall Tales. I've used subsection titles like Slave to the Algorithms, because I love a bit of Grace Jones.
One here, there was this frog.
there was this frog, and what you've got to decide is whether it was the frog that was in the hot water or Kermit the Frog. You've got to decide which one that was. But so the chapter titles, you've got to play, you've got to lighten up. There's actually one which I'll just highlight right now. It's right at the end of the book. There is a mechanism that can get us out of a lot of trouble. So there's one title called Humor the Great Healer.
I'm actually
I like to play with
looking at that right now. Yes. It's
amazing.
actually in a section I'm going to ask you about next, which is called Resolving Our Differences, because that's part of the solution, isn't it?
Yeah, it's probably the ultimate conclusion of what I've tried to do here. When I was training to be a journalist, when I went for my first interview at one of the top universities in the UK for journalism, I got my place on that course by accidentally. I like to bring people together. I've interviewed probably 50, 60,000 people in my career. I still do. I did yesterday. I interviewed 5 people yesterday. And bringing people together and trying to understand what they have to say is probably the most important skill that we can all learn if we don't have it already. Because what we need to do if we're going to find a future of truth that we can trust, believe in, and be happier, and certainly in terms of mental health, be healthier, is to come together around the truth. The truth depends on a few things. Number one is the facts, and the facts they're in the middle of any argument. You might be over here, you might be right or left wing, you might hate the other side, but we need to come back together. So building a really healthy conversation about grown-up things, difficult things, is what the book does. And I say that right from the start, but it's also what we're going to have to do. It takes a bit of time. There is a journey in this thing. We do have to work on it, and we do have to understand it, even if we think we're absolutely right, because not only our core beliefs tell us we are, but also the news has told us 50 times today that this story that isn't true is true. We still have to listen to the other side. If we don't compromise, if we don't listen, we're not going to get the facts. And I tell you what, anyone who believes that they know the truth is probably a long way from it if they're not listening to the other side, because there are facts in that other side of the argument.
There's always 2 sides to every story. Isn't that what we've always, we grew up, there's always 2 sides, and we can't just take as conclusion that someone's putting in our faces. We've got to question, we've got to be curious, we've got to go and explore and find the truth for ourselves.
Yeah, we do. And, a lot of the stuff that I'm saying right now might seem so clear and so obvious, but we are such a long way from it. It's so easy to be blinded by the information that we're fed. So in some ways, what this is, and I did start it accidentally. I didn't mean to write a book. I was actually writing some kind of corporate communications Bible, which is kind of what I do every year over Christmas. It's a great Christmas. Come to my house. It's really, really fascinating. But it became so much, because I am very much a consumer. I believe in the audience is the most important thing. So I ended up siding with the audience. How do we receive information? And then, of course, it just became so gripping. This thing wrote itself. I just had the fingers. They were just my fingers writing it. It is so fascinating. And of course, the process was really just to write myself lots of messages. Could this be true? Could that be true? From my background in journalism, things that I've been really annoyed by in the news for a long time since leaving news, how do we tackle those? So it's really, it was a series of questions, and the answers, hopefully are in there. But as you say, it's already out of date. Things are changing. We end up in AI and deep fakes, the most plausible frauds on the block. And so there are ways, and there is a deep fake test in here. There are certain ways right now that will change to spot deep fakes and just to get our information back.
Claim it back. Absolutely. So I want to just commend you on this book, because it's a serious topic. It's very important for this conversation to happen, and for people to start questioning what is the truth and what isn't. But you do it with such humor. You deliver it to us with entertainment so that we can digest it in a really entertaining way. So I want to just say kudos to you for that, because
thank you. Thanks.
It really is delivered in a it's fascinating. And it makes you think, and it makes you question, and it also makes you feel back in control of some aspects of life that may have felt out of control. And I believe that's going to help with mental health. It's going to help with connection. It's going to help with uniting, big changes that only take a small step to make happen. So amazing.
I really hope so. It was a journey for me. It will be a journey for anyone reading it. But the good thing is, some of these things will feel very familiar, even if you haven't thought about them. And once those things chime, hopefully they'll settle in, and you can spread the word and start to help your friends and your loved ones as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lindley, for joining me today. Everyone, you want to go and grab your copy, go to kmdbooks.com to get your pre-release. It will be everywhere online as of next week, hitting bookstores next month. And go grab this. join the conversation. We're going to be doing a follow-up interview a few weeks after release because we know this is going to create a stir. So coming back and help us be part of the conversation. It's such an important conversation to have, not just for now, but also for the future generations. So let's get to it. Hey, Linda, we've got work to do.
Yeah, we certainly have. We certainly have. But thanks for everything, Karen, and I can't wait to have this discussion with whoever cares enough to read and to have a further conversation. There's a lot to talk about.
There's lots to talk about. All right, guys, go grab your copy now and be part of the conversation and the change. Take care. Bye.